up, YouTube? Crash Wilcox, and today we're going to try to take a look at what video editing software works best with AMD hardware. So I feel like when you get into the video editing world, you hear a lot of things about Intel's QuickSync and NVIDIA's NVENC encoder that is included now on the new RTX graphics cards. But at the same time, you hear how, Ryzen for the value, how inexpensive they can be. They're great value because of their high core and thread count when it comes to multi-threaded applications. And video editing is can be, a high thread count application. So I just wanted to take a look because you don't really find a lot of information on what works best with, AMD kind of hardware. So I thought this would be a good time to take a look at some of the more prominent video editing softwares. And I thought this would be, I would have a good setup to kind of run through that. So the setup that we're using to do these tests on was a Ryzen 9 3900X, just set stock Precision Boost Overdrive on. It had DDR4 3600 megahertz RAM, 32 gigs of it, and it was running on an RX 5700 XT, and it was being encoded to a Sabrent Rocket Gen 4 M.2 NVMe SSD. So not the highest end hardware, but pretty close. You don't got a lot in the normal commercial realm as far as AMD is concerned. That's better than those components. So I thought it would be a good chance to look at some of that. So we're going to take a look at the 7 kind of, like I said, most prominent. And the way that I decided on the 7 was just kind of going online, searching, best video editors, most used video editors, and the stuff that just kept popping up on the 5 or 6 different websites I went to. That was the 7, well, I take it back, 9 that we're going to talk about, 7 that we're going to focus on. And I will touch on the first 2 before we get started on the deep dive into the final 7. So also the other thing, as far as how we're going to break down what the best software for AMD is, there's a lot of things you could get into as far as, OpenCL, OpenGL, you got stream processors, you got cores and threads and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not smart enough to talk to you about that. And I don't know that you care a whole lot. It's, you may not care, how your car goes 150 miles an hour, but when you slam on the pedal, you want it to go 150 miles an hour, right? So in that vein, the things that I'm going to focus on is just kind of showing you hardware utilization. You just pulling up basically my task manager performance and kind of seeing how much of that CPU and GPU is being used. And then the big thing that we all care about is encoding time, from when you click export to when that thing is done, because ultimately that's what we care about. How quickly are we going to get these projects done that we're trying to get done? So that's what we'll focus on. I'll give you my thoughts along the way, try to keep this video relatively short. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the first 2 that we're not really going to focus on, but I just want to touch base on. And the first one for that is going to be Vegas Pro 17. I tried to use Vegas Pro 17, and I'm not the most computer savvy dude on the planet, but I'm also not a schlub. And with all these other programs that I've used and some that are not included in here, they're relatively simple. You just jump on there, you start messing around for a minute, you can sort of figure it out if you know what you're doing. Vegas Pro 17 seemed like a program stuck in time. I don't know how else to say it. It seemed old and clunky compared to a lot of the newer software. It was just not very user-friendly. Even simple things like transforming your screen size, just not a good software. I'm sure there's Vegas Pro fans out there, and God bless you all, but in my opinion, Vegas Pro stinks. I do not recommend it. Don't try it. It's expensive anyways, and it's not worth the money, in my opinion. Then the second one that we're not going to focus on, and even worse than Vegas Pro, was Avid Media Composer. Avid Media Composer was a brutal software. Even to download Media Composer was miserable compared to everything else on the market. And I know it's kind of a big program in Hollywood, and I feel like from what I've heard, that's kind of what they use. I don't know why, other than, change is slow, but Avid Media Composer sucked. It took me a while to even figure out how to download it. I wound up downloading Avid Link instead of Avid Media Composer. It took me a while to figure out what that was, or delete it, and then go back in and re-download Media Composer, and then I spent probably 10 minutes looking inside Media Composer, not even knowing how to import a video. So again, maybe this is more of an indictment on me, but Avid Media Composer, if Vegas Pro stinks, Media Composer sucks. Don't use either of those, in my recommendation. If you feel differently, please let me know down in the description. I'd be happy to tell you why you're wrong and why you should focus on one of these other softwares. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the first one.
And first up, we got OpenShot Video Editor. This is the freest of the free software that's going to be on this list. And the way this is going to work is I'm just going to have a video running in the background being exported. So basically, I took a benchmark of star control and then repeated it about 2 or 3 times just to get a 10-minute clip. And then I added in a video of myself just talking from a previous video. And I used both of those clips together to form basically that 10-minute clip. And I cut it with one transition, I think somewhere in the middle, just so that the video would have, a couple different layers of video to export, some audio, and then a transition to go through as well. 10-minute clip. And I'm just letting it run in the background here while I'm giving you my spiel on these softwares. I got Task Manager pulled up just so you can see the performance of CPU, GPU, and RAM. And don't worry if you don't catch all the numbers on here. I'll have a graph at the end of how these did. But OpenShot's a great beginner software. If you're just getting into video editing, or maybe you just want to make a quick little, video game scene or something. You don't really care to learn about video editing. You just want to throw something together. This is a good software for you. Or maybe you just have a, low end or a lower end computer, or maybe a really tight budget and you can't afford some of the more expensive stuff. OpenShot's a good place to jumpstart your kind of YouTube career, in my opinion. So there you can go. You see this about 40% GPU utilization. Not too bad. Did this all in about 11:44, so 11 minutes and 44 seconds. Next up, we got Hitfilm Express. This is a freemium, I would say, video editor. You can get the bare bones package for free, but then they do sell add-ons if you want to get, different sort of packs and that sort of stuff. Hitfilm is a great program for adding special effects. If you're into that, you can do some of that After Effects type work. So you're going to have to, learn a little bit. This kind of has a steep learning curve, in my opinion, where OpenShot is pretty basic. Hitfilm can get pretty in depth. So you're going to have to do your homework on Hitfilm Express. And you can see this one utilizes that same, 40 to 50% looks like GPU usage. Not terribly heavy on the CPU usage. So that's something to consider here. Same thing with OpenShot. They're a little more GPU focused, but this will just give you guys kind of a quick rundown of how well each of these software is utilizing the AMD hardware that we have installed. So again, like we talked about, and you can see down here on the Task Manager, Ryzen 9 3900X, 12 cores, 24 threads, and that GPU is the 5700 XT. So pretty good hardware. But Hitfilm Express, real nice program if you are into that video editing with some special effects. This might be where you decide to land. But there you go. Next up, we're going to jump into VideoStudio 2020. This does have a 30-day free trial. The full Pro package is $80. I will say it's not entirely free. Like, they give you it free for 30 days, but it's not the entire VideoStudio like program. So there are some limitations. Like, I don't think you can export in H.264, which is kind of a bummer. You know, I feel like if you're going to give a free trial to something, it'd be best to give the entire program a try, because something like not having H.264, that might be what the person is looking to use this for. And now that they don't have the opportunity to try that out and see how it works, they may not want to, decide on this program. But anyways, you can start to see the CPU utilization is jumping up here. It's taking more advantage of those cores. So this is the first time that we've seen that. VideoStudio is a good software. I think it's still in that vein of, if you're just kind of doing simple YouTube videos, one or two scenes maybe, or video streams, you're not trying to get terribly complex in the video that you're producing, I think this is a good product for you. It doesn't seem quite as intensive as like a Hitfilm, where Hitfilm you could make, with enough add-on packs, you could make a Hollywood movie out of Hitfilm. I don't feel like you could do that with VideoStudio. This seems a little more simplified, which is fine if that's what you need it for. You don't need to go out and get, Hitfilm 4 if all you're going to be doing is cutting, a video game stream a couple of times. So that would seem like a big waste of time, but that's just my opinion. But VideoStudio, nice layout, easy to use, easy to learn. You can just jump in here, start working your way through it. It's pretty simple to figure out, which makes it very user-friendly, in my opinion. And you can see that CPU utilization is staying high. GPU utilization not quite as demanding on there. But again, don't focus too much on that. We'll have the graph at the end so you guys can see that stuff. I don't know how long I let this video run for. Apparently I didn't cut it off early, which is fine. So OpenShot, I would say if you're an absolute beginner, maybe give that one a try. See if this video editing thing is something you enjoy. If you're starting to move into that more intermediate to, I would say, advanced stage, that's kind of where Hitfilm would land, in my opinion, because it can be quite complicated, especially when you start getting into the special effects and all that. It can be quite a steep learning curve. They do have a lot of good tutorials, but it is still a steep learning curve. And then VideoStudio, I would say, again, if you got $80 and you want a little more beefed up beginner version of video editing, this is probably a good software to land on. So that's would be my recommendations of the first three. And then here you go, 2 minutes and 55 seconds. So this thing, like I talked about, VideoStudio, very fast exporter. OpenShot, not so much. But anyways, pressing on, we got Movavi coming up next. Movavi has a lot of options as far as all the way from free up into, full paid versions. The one that we used here is the free Movavi video editor. And I like Movavi. Of all the software that I used on here, I think this was up near the top as far as user experience for me. It is much like VideoStudio and some of the other ones we'll touch on, very simple to use. If you have any experience with video editing software at all, you can just jump right in here and you'll start cutting transitions, all that sort of stuff real easy. There's not a steep learning curve on this one, in my opinion. It's actually kind of cool too as well with the way that you can sort of custom build your own transitions in here pretty easily. You're just basically dragging and dropping them into your video clips, and then there's a few simple adjustments that you can make. It's not quite as in-depth as, say, a Hitfilm. Like I said, you can really get involved in Hitfilm. I don't feel like Movavi is that deep, but you can still, this is a step above OpenShot and VideoStudio, in my opinion. You can get I think you could put together some pretty nice footage and a nice project on Movavi. And you can see here it is starting to take a little more advantage even of that CPU, GPU usage. And then here we go. Coming up next, Filmora. Filmora, along with Movavi, those are my two favorite user experience as far as video editing is concerned. And for this one, we use the Filmora 9. They do have a Filmora Pro version. That one's a little pricier, but a lot more involved. So if you want to try Filmora, give Filmora 9 a try. And then if you like it and you're getting to that more advanced stage, maybe bump up to Filmora Pro. But here we go. Filmora does not give a crap about your CPU. This is almost entirely GPU focused, which is the first time we've seen this. So if you have a lesser CPU, maybe a APU or a 4-core, older Ryzen CPU or something, this might be something you'd consider. You can see that it's down in the teens, but that GPU usage is up in the 60s, which is pretty nice. If you've got a strong GPU, this might be a good program for you. But as far as just user experience with the video editing software, I think Filmora, in my opinion, is the best. Movavi is a close second, but Filmora just makes it very easy. There's not a steep learning curve at all, but you can get quite in depth as far as what you're able to create on here. And they do sell add-on packs as well if you want to get a little more than what they provide. So there you go, 5 minutes and 55 seconds. Not the fastest we've seen, but certainly not the slowest. And then after this one, we got coming up the two big dogs. Can't leave those off the list. So first one we're going to look at here is Premiere Pro. Everybody knows about Premiere. I'm sure if you've done any video editing at all, you've probably dabbled in Premiere. And if you haven't done any, it may not be a bad place to spend some time, even if you don't really like it. Best to familiarize yourself with it because everyone seems to use it. So Adobe, they do have a couple of different options. So you can get just Premiere Pro for about $21 a month. You can get the Adobe Creative Cloud, the entire thing with, Premiere Pro, Photoshop, everything that they have, After Effects, for $53. So that alone is a pretty good value when you look at all the different, programs and software that they offer. $53 is a lot of money, but if you're into this stuff, that's not the worst way to go. And then also with that, there are discounts that you can get on Adobe. So if you're a student or a teacher, I think you can get the entire Creative Cloud for $21, which is a real bargain if you enjoy using those. So something to consider. And then looking here at the Task Manager, you can see Premiere Pro. This is the first one that we've seen that's really CPU focused. It's using high 70s, 80s. It's even touched into the 90s on CPU utilization, and doesn't really care a lot for the GPU. It's down in the high teens, 20. And then also, if you've paid attention to any of these, it's using the most RAM that we've seen. So like I said, we got 32 gigs of RAM in this. It's using, in the 12 gigs. Most of the other programs that we've seen have all been, in the 5 to 10 range. So this one's definitely taking advantage of that CPU and RAM. Doesn't need a whole lot of GPU, it appears. But if you're unclear, or if you just want a good place to get started, I don't know if Premiere Pro is, like I said, it's something you should learn, but this is a little more intensive. This is more for that, I would say, if you're going from the intermediate to advanced stage of video editing, that's where Premiere Pro, I think, would be best suited. You can make feature-length Hollywood movies in Premiere Pro, and they do. So that's something I would look into. And then last but not least, certainly, is the coolest kid on the block in 2020, everybody's new favorite, DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve 16 has a free version, which for 99% of all video editors on the planet is all you would ever need. But they do offer a $300 studio version. So there's a little bit of a paywall, but like I said, for 99% of us, we will never need what is behind that paywall. So if you want to try DaVinci Resolve, just get the free. And then if you find that, you just got hired by, I don't know, a Hollywood film company, maybe spend that $300 and get the studio version. But what you're seeing here, I forgot to pull Task Manager up as I was running through this. And since I've recorded this previously, I'm not going to redo it. So all I am doing is looping the end of the video clip, because I pulled Task Manager up like the last, 10, 15 seconds or whatever. So I'm just looping that through over and over again. But it's pretty good representation of what the whole program did. It basically, much like Premiere, very CPU focused here. Up in the 80s, high 80s, low 90s. Same thing on the RAM, up over 12 gigs of RAM that it's using. And then also not a whole lot of GPU. So if you've got a very strong CPU, this is definitely a good program for you. It's going to take all the cores and threads that you can throw at it. And if you got, some decent RAM in there, that'll help. But GPU is not terribly focused on that. But much like Premiere Pro, I would say DaVinci is that step up in what you're able to do. So this is definitely an advanced program, in my opinion. You can do a lot of good work in here, but there is a steep learning curve. But lucky, there is a lot of good tutorials. I also have a tutorial which I will have linked in the description, and you can check that out if you want to learn some simple how to make a video in DaVinci Resolve. So with all that being said, I'm just going to jump here into the graphs so you guys can see all of this. So going through the graph here, we got all the video editing software down on the bottom. Got their times listed next to it that it took to export, and then also their RAM usage in blue, CPU usage in orange, and then GPU usage in gray. So obviously you can see the clear winners as far as time was concerned. DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro were out in front of the pack there, and then surprisingly VideoStudio not too far behind with 2 minutes and 55 seconds. So the thing that I guess that surprises me is it seemed like, the two programs that focused most heavily on CPU usage obviously seemed to have the best time, whereas VideoStudio did not really focus. I mean, it focused a little bit on CPU, but not terribly heavy. So kind of an outlier there. But overall, OpenShot, great for beginners, not the most effective at utilizing this AMD hardware. Hitfilm it's not the most effective at utilizing the hardware, but it does offer some unique abilities as far as what you're able to create inside of there because of the After Effects type of components there. And moving on, VideoStudio, again, we talked about that one at length there. Not too bad, exports pretty quickly. Movavi, another good program, and it pretty heavy on the CPU usage. Surprising that its time wasn't better. Filmora doesn't give a crap about your CPU, really, mostly GPU focused. So if that's the way your layout looks, then that might be a good option for you. If you're, strong GPU, not the strongest CPU. And then obviously Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve, we've talked about, pretty CPU heavy. And just as far as the way that those programs, I guess, utilize the software or the hardware, definitely puts them a cut above. So
that's that. Those are the 7 video editors, 9 really that we're going to cover, but we don't care about the first 2. So my final thoughts: what is the best video editing software for AMD hardware? And I would have to say the winner is DaVinci Resolve 16. Maybe unsurprising to some of you, but simply because it's free and Premiere Pro is $21 a month, you got to give it to the free product. So they both work well, but I would say of all those to try, if you have lower end hardware, like I talked about, some of those 4-core CPUs or something like that, look into the OpenShot, look into the Filmoras, those might be some of your better options. If you have maybe a better GPU, then focus on those as well. And then if you've got really high-end Ryzen 9, maybe a 3700, 3800X, or God forbid a 3950X, definitely DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro are probably where you're going to want to be. It's worth the learning curve. Those are lightning fast exports. They use all that CPU power. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to have a lot more content. I try to keep it coming out regularly. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please throw it down there in the comments. I will do my best to read them all, comment to all. So that's all I got for you guys. God bless.